Brewington, I'm interested to hear from you about the intersection of climate and invasive species. We know that our climate is changing, fewer trade wind days, these really massive rain events. Of course, we have more hurricanes. How our climate changes impact what species are able to come here and take root?
Yeah, no, it's a great and kind of terrifying question, and I'm going to take this second to make a plug for a group that both Christy and I are a part of called the Pacific Regional Invasive Species and Climate Change Management Network, just Pacific RISCC for short. We have a website, pacificrisc.org, where we're consolidating information about the intersection between climate change and invasive species, two huge threats to our region by themselves. But together, they can have a lot of different impacts. A really great example, a very sad example, is Hawaii's forest birds. And as the climate is warming in Hawaii and those warming temperatures are rising, the mosquitoes that carry avian malaria are also able to thrive at those higher elevations. And it's basically pushing those birds, to extinction because eventually they can't go any higher. Climate change is changing where species might pop up and making it easier for new invasive species to thrive. And then something that I'm really concerned about is the flip side of that, how climate change can make us as islands less resilient to a changing climate. So invasive species are affecting, how we're able to respond and prepare for things like sea level rise and extreme events like storms, wildfires, like the fire that devastated Lahaina just a year ago. And so the work that we're doing with Pacific Risk is really trying to draw attention to that issue and the intersection between invasive species and climate change, and also try to help think through some novel solutions that are sort of win-wins, right? Like there's, if you've heard of nature-based solutions, that's something where you think, well, I'm worried about water supplies, and one of the things that we know here in Hawaii is that invasive trees like strawberry guava use a lot of water. And they're not supposed to be in our forests, but they're everywhere. And if you're able to remove those invasive trees, you are actually giving yourself more water in the long term because the forest is able to sort of store that in the groundwater supply. And so that helps you think about confronting a future that might be drier, for example. So by sort of coming up with these, relatively easy solutions today by tackling invasive species, you can build resilience for a changing climate in the future.
And I just want to stay on with this. What would you say is the biggest threat right now facing our ecosystem and our agriculture community?
I think invasive species-wise, I really worry about ants. I know Chair Hurd mentioned ants and mosquitoes, not just for the impacts that they have on Hawaii's birds, but on the impacts that they have for our human health as well. The governor is a medical professional. He's well aware that dengue is a disease that's transmitted by invasive mosquitoes. And that's a problem not just for Hawaii, but for the entire Pacific and much of the United States, mainland areas too. Agriculturally, I don't think anything threatens agricultural production more than ants. And there have been many studies that have shown, that if the red imported fire ant that Chair Hurd mentioned earlier were to arrive to Hawaii, that the losses economically, just writ large, would be huge, on the order of billions of dollars. And so an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure kind of thing. It's really worth making sure that these threats don't reach Hawaii, and then taking care of the things that are already here.
Yeah, and Christy,